Right, welcome, Logan.
Hi,
Thank you for joining us today.
you're welcome.
Right, please would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name, as mentioned before, is Logan. I'm 18,
Mm-hmm.
currently not in school,
Mm-hmm.
and I have autism.
Okay. A little bit about your interests.
Um, I like reading a lot, playing video games, swimming, and writing. Honestly,
Mm-hmm. Okay. What games do you like playing?
a lot of fantasy RPGs type games.
Okay. Um, what game are you playing at the moment?
Well, at this very moment, I'm not playing anything, and I haven't really been playing games lately. But
Your most recent game?
I think it was Assassin's Creed Origins.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Right. So would you mind telling us a little bit about your disability? You said you have autism.
Um, autism is if I remember correctly, it's a cognitive disability.
Neurological, I think.
Neurological, yeah,
Something
neurological.
like that. Not cognitive.
Definitely affects the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And just makes life a little difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If we think about the triad of impairments, right? What about there are three different impairments that fall in there. The one is language, the one is social skills, and the one is restricted or repetitive ways or behaviors. So, in terms of language, what do you find? How are you affected in terms of language?
I get very, very, very irritated when people don't say words correctly and or use Americanisms or simply use one word repetitively to the point where they say that word more than anything else in the sentence.
Okay.
Like the word miss.
Right.
Or the word like. They want to strangle people. Right?
Okay.
Figuratively
speaking, yes, thank you. So one of the things with language is you can be a little bit literal in terms of language. So not big into metaphors and similes and sarcasm.
Really?
Thank you for that one. Logan cognitively processed sarcasm when he was about 11, I think, probably about 10, 11. He literally came home one day and said to me, "Is that sarcasm?" Because he gave me a definition of what sarcasm was. And then from then on, every time I said anything that was vaguely sarcastic, he actually said to me, "Are you being sarcastic?" But it wasn't meant as as an insult. He was actually asking. And eventually that was how he processed what sarcasm was. Okay, and now he's pretty good at picking it up. Okay, what about social skills? And interpreting other people's behaviors and the way you express yourself.
I'm not very good at expressing emotions and feelings. To be frank there. I'm not very comfortable around people in general, so I don't have a very good social life to that extent. Mostly because I struggle to get to know people, mostly because I judge character extremely easily, and I normally am uncomfortable when it turns out that I'm right. And quite a lot of the time I end up being right.
Okay, and let's just talk about the social skills there. Have you experienced much in the way of bullying?
Yes.
Okay, that answered that question. And then what about friends? Have you got friends?
Yes.
Lots of friends, few friends, couple of friends?
There are a few friends.
You've got a few friends, okay.
Mostly people who are just as socially awkward as I am.
So that's a good way of putting it. This socially awkward. No, they do tend to all come from the same planet sometimes.
We're all cut from the same cloth.
Okay. What about restricted or repetitive behaviors or ways, things that you do that are repetitive?
I follow a cycle every single day. If that cycle is disrupted just once, everything goes downhill.
What is your daily cycle? What was your daily cycle before we went into lockdown?
Wake up, take the bird through, or wake up, get dressed, ready, then take the bird through. It's only take the bird through, and then hopefully, if there's enough time, try to go back to sleep.
This is a teenage thing, have to say. Right. In terms of repetitive things, when Logan was little, he used to like to play the same games all the time. He also used to like to eat the same thing for breakfast every single day. When Logan was little, he used to flap his hands, but he hasn't done that for many, many years. We used to walk around and go, "Stop flapping," and eventually he stopped. But he kind of outgrew that more than anything else. Although he still does sometimes. He does funny things and he'll repeat the funny arm things that you used to do, the swingy arm things that you used to do. Yeah, that one. All right, let's move on. How do you feel in social situations, and does it give you anxiety?
Yes. Yes, it does give me social anxiety. I'm very uncomfortable in social situations because I normally prefer to remain quiet and secluded in a corner. Okay,
what were your school experiences like?
For the most part, poor. I'm not going to name the schools, but I didn't have the best experiences with them. They are actually responsible for some of the issues I now have.
So, right, you had some really bad previous school experiences. How could your school experiences have been improved?
Better teachers. Yes, that's not very elaborate, but the teachers themselves could have been a little more accepting and accommodating. Because with what I was going through and what I have been through, they did not help.
Is there anything you wish that your teachers could have done when they were teaching you?
Be a lot more accommodating, understanding,
okay. And how? What would you like them to physically do in class?
They could have been a little less demanding.
Less demanding? Okay. How? In which ways were they demanding?
Give me this work, give it to me now, and I don't want to hear anything about it until it's done.
Okay.
No questions asked. If you don't know, that's too bad.
Okay, so not allowing you to ask questions. All right. What about what are the things that your teachers do for you or have done for you that have really helped?
Given me an escape route.
When would they give you an escape route?
And there are large vents and halls I'm normally allowed to leave because of the loud sounds set off my sensory overload. Will cause a sensory overload, and during breaks I used to be allowed to go into libraries just to avoid being social, really.
Okay. And then what about structure, in terms of structure?
We used to color coordinate my books to different lessons. Blue for English, red for maths, green for
life sciences.
Life science, but
yeah. Okay, so that's one thing that was done. Oh, would you like to tell us about your sensory sensitivity?
I can't really handle large quantities of bright lights, sounds, and close quarters.
Okay. What about, I mean, you have very, very sensitive hearing. You've got very sensitive sight.
So in other words, don't throw a flashbang in the room.
Yes. And what other sense of yours is very...
Touch and smell.
And smell, yes. One of the interesting things is Logan will come in, and if somebody's cooking something, he can often tell us exactly what that person has used.
Sometimes from the other half of the house away.
Yeah. What spices and flavorings and things are actually in the food. What would you like teachers to have known in order to understand you better?
That despite not being able to express my emotions, I'm extremely sensitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that by overwhelming me with work has a habit of actually causing me to have a meltdown.
Mm-hmm. All right, what about eye contact? Because that's something that some and this has been pretty easy because we've kind of been facing the screen to do this. But a lot of children and adults with autism don't like making eye contact.
It hurts.
Okay, so it's actually physically painful? All right, and would you like to tell everybody what it is that you usually do instead of making eye contact?
I slightly tilt my head to the side, just doesn't need to be too much, and then I focus on the bridge of the nose, normally directly between the other person's eyes.
Yes.
And it normally does the trick.
Yeah.
I mean, I fooled this person here initially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, yes, I do know when he's doing it. In fact, most of the time if he looks at me, he's doing it. But
that's because my head's normally tilted a lot now.
So, yes, a lot of the time Logan will look here. I notice that he's doing it. Okay, but it fools most people. And one of the negative things is kids who don't learn how to make some form of eye contact. They often look guilty of things even when they're innocent. So
yep.
Then they're looking all over the place and they actually look kind of shifty as opposed to being able to make eye contact and talk to people. All right. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. There are a couple of questions I'm going to answer, but you don't need to be here for those.
Bye.
Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple of questions that came up that more from parenting perspective. The one that came up was, when did you find out that Logan had autism and what made you decide to get him assessed for it? Okay, so I knew that Logan had autism from probably when he was about 4. I only had him assessed officially for it at the age of 12. The reason being is that we knew it was there and we didn't feel it was really necessary to add another label at that stage, and that was the point at which we decided that Logan needed additional support and he needed to move into a special needs environment where he could get the support that he actually needed. So he was getting to a stage where he was having to change classes and move around school and have different teachers for every lesson. And we just found that that was just too much for him to cope with when he was in a situation where the teachers weren't actually giving him that kind of support, the structure for him to get from one lesson to the next lesson. He ended up having all his books in his bag and taking everything from one place to the next. And he struggled to cope with that whole timetable and the changing. So that was when we felt it was necessary to actually have an actual assessment done. Prior to that, we knew it was there and we just dealt with it. I had been a private therapist with kids who had autism. That was how I paid my way through my studies. And so right from day one, I think we taught him to make eye contact. We worked on the social skills, making sure he was socialized, making sure he developed all his manners, the same way we would do with any child. But I think it was already sort of naturally happening in our home. In terms of the kind of behaviors that he exhibited when he was little, He did used to finger flap. He would avoid making eye contact unless he was told, look at me, and he learned to do that. So eventually became fairly automatic. He would simply go into conversation without having said, hello, how are you? So those were kind of things that we had to teach him how to do that he hadn't learned how to do prior to that. In terms of play, he would love to play the same games over and over again. He would watch the same thing on TV over and over again. He was incredibly good at mimicking what he had heard on television. So he used to talk about helicopters, and then also talk about being stuck in the mud. So it just, picking up the accents that he would hear on TV. People would say to me, oh, is he from England? And he would, he would automatically be speaking in such a way. When he was in grade 2, he did the C.S. Lewis poem, The Jabberwocky, that's it, The Jabberwocky. And he literally, we'd spent 3 weeks trying to teach him what are the choices that we had. And he...
I ended up
let me finish talking, then you can say it. Anyway, eventually I said, well, what about if we get, he said we'd be passionate about dragons. He's kind of a little bit obsessive about dragons. And I said to him, well, what if we find your poem about a dragon? So then we found the Jabberwocky. And after 3 weeks of trying to get him to learn short little, like 1-2 stanza poem, it literally took 3 times. He'd memorized the entire thing. Right, Jared, child of mine. Logan, would you like to do the Jabberwocky? Can you still remember it?
Can I still remember it? Do I have an accent? Yes, I still remember it. 'Twas brillig and the slimy toes, the gyring gimble in the web, all mimsy with the borg roads and the mum rats are grave. Beware of the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware of the Jub bird, and shun the frumious bander snatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the mountain foe he sought. And rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in offish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes aflame came whiffling through the toad he would, and burgled as it came. 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack, he left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O Frabjous day, Kalukale, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig and the slimy toes, he gyre and gimble in the web, all mimsy with the borgroves and the mome rats out grave.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, once he had learnt that poem, he's never ever forgotten it. And if Logan hears something that appeals to him, it sticks with him. So you've got to be very careful, even as a parent, not to say something, because number one, he'll take you literally, and number two, he'll never forget. For example, when he was 5, I said to him, when you're 10, you can get a snake. And we literally didn't talk about it for years. And it must be 2 months before he turned 10, and he was like, Mom, don't forget, when I turn 10, I get to have a snake.
I didn't get the snake.
Yes, well, that was because by that stage I had my accident, and I then had carers, and my carers said, if you get a snake, we're not coming to work for you anymore. So we eventually made a really good compromise, which is not so easy with somebody on the spectrum, and we ended up getting a bearded dragon, and we had that beardy for about 8.5 years. So we very recently lost him, and it's been devastating because children on the spectrum, adults on the spectrum, people on the spectrum don't really cope with change very well. So the other thing I've noticed from my experience as a teacher working with children who are on the spectrum is that often children experience things in extreme. They may not always have the words to get it out, but if it's good, it's fantastic. If it's not so great, it's terrible. Okay, there's no middle ground. Okay, it's very intense. The best schooling experience I had with Logan was his grade R year. The teacher came to me one day and she said to me, the very first day of grade R, he walked in there after tea break and he had, she said she was carrying her cup of coffee, and he would, there's a distinct aroma of coffee in the room, and she said from there she knew it was going to be a good year. That said, her son was also on the high functioning end of the autistic spectrum, so she was fantastic with him because she really understood him. And she understood that he needed structure. She also could understand that even though he cognitively understands something, that he often struggles to put himself into somebody else's shoes. That said, it's not that he doesn't have empathy. He actually has a lot of empathy. But if he it goes also with that feeling things in extreme. If somebody's being bullied, he's very quick to defend. There's a very strong understanding of right and wrong. Things are not grey in the middle. And so he's got himself into trouble for defending people on more than one occasion. And then, he's... what was I going to tell you? Oh, when they were playing at tea time, if the others wanted to play a game that he didn't want to play with, his teacher said she could explain to him exactly why he should be joining in everybody else's game, and at the end of it he would turn around and explain to her exactly why they should be playing his game instead. So having that comes in with that rigidity, that rigid frame of mind that has a very great difficulty in changing opinions. Or changing viewpoints once it's set. But that said, I have been incredibly fortunate. He has been an incredibly good child. He's not an aggressive child. He is gentle. He's been my greatest helper and probably my most loyal person in my life. So he's been a real blessing.